right, welcome to the K-Fic Cafe. This is your hosts, JT and
Jay.
all right. And so for anybody who's new and who's listening in for the first time, the K-Fic Cafe is an online cafe in a matter of speaking where other writers can just get together through us and we just discuss different aspects of writing and how to accomplish different techniques, how to approach certain situations, different scenarios, and just ask for advice from other fellow writers as well. The K-Fic Cafe also offers free proofreading, editing, and depending on whether we know the language, translating even. Um, this is all free. We're doing this out of our own goodwill, and we just wanted to kind of give back to the Wattpad community for our own stories. And yeah, that's more or less our main mission, I guess. We just want to help other people write better and kind of help all the other writers that are on Wattpad that we've seen so far. Yeah. So to start off, shout outs. So this week, people who have contacted us, shout out to Jersey Blink Theorist. I believe he does Blackpink fan fictions. He has sent us some chapters to proofread/edit. If you are listening to this right now, we are getting to it. We promise. I've just been a bit busy lately, and I'm sure. And Jay just had an exam today, so we have both been relatively busy, and we will get to it as soon as we can. I think we had one more person.
Yep. For our second shout out, we have Got No Jams 0613, who's actually writing his second book / season of the Record Breaker series. And it's a really good book to read. The whole series is basically you are a aspiring soccer player, basically. And if you're into sports, especially if you're into soccer, or as we say it normally, football, I would recommend reading it.
Good God. So if you have been with us and you've been listening to our past podcasts, Jay and I would just like to talk about things that we have done in terms of the things we have advised you to do in the past. So from episode 1, we talked about planning and outlining. And I know Jay has been doing some of that recently.
I sure have. I recently started, well, no, I've always had my outline, but I began to take some of the things that we talked about from the first episode and incorporate it into my outline. So as I began to write the first draft of my story, it's actually going to plan out correctly.
Yeah, I have a planning thing too, and it's sometimes things that don't make it into my first draft, I just put them at the bottom of my planning document for future reference. And so that way I always have a record of things that I've done and I don't forget something that I might want to use later. In terms of episode 2, we talked about frequently reading and writing. I know for me, I have been doing a lot of that. I have a nonfiction book next to me, Rock, Break, Scissors by William Poundstone. I've been doing a lot of reading on that lately, a lot of Wattpad reading, a lot of writing at 2 a.m. Don't do what I do, but still allocate a certain time of your day to do some writing so that way you get something done. Jay, what about you?
Well, to study from, this is not fan fiction or anything related to that, but I have been doing a lot more research for another story I plan on working on in my music appreciation class. I've been reading this book Inside Out. So yeah, aside from using
no
it
relationship to the Disney film or Pixar film, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, I got what
you mean. And also, this is for anybody who is learning English as a second language. As someone who taught English in Asia for a summer camp, and also learning Chinese as a second language, I will advise anybody who's learning a new language, whether it be English or some other language, that one of the best ways to learn how to do proper grammar, increase your vocabulary, etc. I advise talk to people who you know who are already fluent. So in my case, my mom at home, she is fluent in Chinese in Mandarin. So I talk to her a lot in Chinese. She talks to me only in Chinese, so I have to kind of figure out what she's trying to say. For people who are not in who do not have friends who are fluent in English, we are fluent in English. And if you reach out to us on our email, the kficcafe@gmail.com, we'd be more than happy to talk to you through Google Hangouts or through just a regular email. Just talk with you. And I mean, if I'm the one who's responding, I will copy what you send me and I will revise it. So that way you know how it's properly supposed to look. And then I'll give you my response. And then from that, you can just kind of understand how that works. But the best way to do it is talking and actually using it rather than just absorbing vocabulary, because that doesn't actually help us much. In terms of writing, I advise read as much as you can. Read anything written by English authors. Neil Gaiman, Judy Blume, J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, whatever it may be. Read as much as you can, because the more you read, the more your brain recognizes proper, grammatically correct writing. And I have been reading lots of fiction, way too much fiction, ever since I was a little kid. So my brain is always cross-analyzing and kind of drawing connections and parallels between this and that. And you'll kind of hear us using a lot of slang and idioms too. If you don't know what we're understanding or what we're saying, and you don't understand what we're saying, good Lord. As you can see, we're still practicing too, even though we've been raised here. Just if you don't understand something that we're talking about in the podcast, just send us an email or a message through any of the platforms and just say, hey, at this certain timestamp, at this certain minute and second, I didn't know what you're talking about with this saying. Can you explain this to me? And then we'll break it down for you so you understand. Because the whole point of these podcasts and the K-Fic Cafe is that it's for you to learn and for you to get better. And so that's my spiel. In terms of podcast, sorry.
What? I was asking what not. Now we go into the topic, or you want to?
I know. And for podcast 3, we talked about dialogue. That one, you always should be having dialogue. It shouldn't just be strictly describing everything that is happening. Although there may be times where that happens, but there will be sometimes heavy dialogue moment or heavy action moment, or you got to mix of both, and you just got to work with that. And it's always great to practice dialogue. That's the best way to do it. Just practice writing dialogue.
Love to hear it, bro.
All right, now
we are going to get into our topic for this week, which is character design.
Woo! And so, especially if you are someone who is in the K-pop community on Wattpad, we're definitely going to be addressing how do you incorporate, well, this just goes for fan fiction in general, how do you incorporate pre-existing characters into your stories? And we will get to that later.
So for the quote of, that was terrible. For the quote of this week, it comes from Ernest Hemingway, and it goes, when writing a novel, a writer should create living people, not characters. A character is a caricature.
Yeah. I mean, characters should just literally be, I mean, that's what it is, isn't it? Because when a story is as if, is how do I say this? It's like fiction, especially. It is a false story that would happen in the life of another person, which means these characters are real life people. At least they should be, right? And especially if you're writing an idol fan fiction, they better be real people, because if my favorite idol doesn't act the way they're supposed to in the story, then it's going to feel off, and it's not going to be as engaging, you know. So if you can emulate, like, you can definitely feel that this is a genuine person. Like, you would want to meet this person. Like, that should be the goal. That's how you know, like, when people want to meet your character in real life, then that's when you know you've created living people. Take Harry Potter. Everybody wants to meet Harry Potter, the boy who lived. Not just in story, but in real life. Everybody wants to meet Daniel Radcliffe, because, like, J.K. Rowling has created a character to the point that it's like a actual person, and it feels so real to people. And so when Ernest Hemingway says that character is a caricature. For people who don't know what a caricature is, it is an image that exaggerates certain features of your of your, like, certain features of the subject that's being drawn. So you might see this from street artists who draws these overly proportional heads, humongous heads, little bodies. Honestly, if you just look it up, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But like, it's over exaggeration. You don't want to make this person seem like, oh, so and so is like way above like human level, and once it reaches that point, it doesn't feel as realistic. Like, if you like, it's not just superhero, because if you think about it, even Superman has weaknesses. You know, Lois Lane, Kryptonite. He is just as normal and human as you and me, and that makes him more relatable that way too, because he's not genuinely superhuman. He still has weaknesses like us. You know what I mean?
Mm. The appearances.
Oh, that's right. So when I put this in my notes, what I had in mind was what I see in a lot of K-pop fan fiction is when you're describing not just characters, but when you're describing something in general, you don't really describe it. You just put a picture up of what you are thinking of. And then sometimes if you want to edit a bit more, you can just say, oh, just imagine this person is you. Or, oh, just imagine this person doesn't have blue hair, etc., right? And that's just, it just feels lazy, you know? Like, I'm not trying to call you out, but like, when you're writing, this is the parts that kind of reveals more about the characters. Like, if you talk from the perspective of, let's say, this guy, and then his crush shows up, and then you can use a lot of like certain adjectives to like embellish the fact that like she is out of this world. Like, her like, you can, instead of just saying she has brown hair, you can say she has these flowing, I can't think of anything, flowing chocolate like hair. I don't know. But like, it sounds like it's in, it's, there's a hook. It's, you can get a lot more emotion from that, and rather than just like she has brown hair, and that's just a bit bland. And the same goes with pictures too. It conveys a way too much, like what you're, everything that you want exactly across, and then that eliminates the imagination aspect of the fiction, which kind of removes from it.
Another thing about using idols, and like describing their physical features instead of a picture, I actually once described one of my characters. It's not in any of my stories or anything, but it was Jungkook from BTS, and the way I described him was that he was 5'10". He wasn't that muscular, but he still had strong facial features. One thing I do notice about him, and that comes from like the fandom as well, is that he has like a really good jawline. So I want to incorporate that. And now,
I'm just going to interject something real quick. Mm-hmm. Also, sometimes you might need to be specific with the descriptions. So like, a good jawline, what exactly does that mean? Because good is a very subjective adjective. It can mean different things to different people. So maybe you mean a very accented jawline, or a very sharp jawline. You know, just these little adjectives make the image in the reader's head a lot more descriptive, right? And so by doing that, you give the reader, because the joys of fiction is that they're putting the story together themselves as well. You're giving them all the ingredients, right? But everything that is happening, you want to be able to convey it into their head. So using pictures kind of, I feel like it eats away from it. Yeah, continue with what you were saying. My bad.
Just now I did a little bit more research on his description, and it talks about his square-like face, which is something that somebody who knows the culture would be able to point out, not really me, because it's, well, you know. But yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. It's just things I feel like I need to quickly interject, so that way people, like, before I forget it. A lot of people like to use not really stereotypes, but like sometimes an idol will get like a nickname and you have this compelling urge to just like include it. Like I'm a Twice fan. I pretty much only listen and just do Twice stuff. So like I don't know. Mina and Penguin is very commonly associated. So saying like she's like a penguin and all that, I feel like that is overused. And I feel like it is something that should only be done lightly. And I have this somewhere in my notes elsewhere, probably for a future episode, but like do tread carefully. The details in which you're describing your character should be used to describe your character, but not to like play around with idle trivia or all those other little tidbits. Yeah. So yeah, sorry.
You good? You're good. Another thing, since you mentioned Mina, and that penguin thing is mentioned a lot. So instead of saying she walked like a penguin, how about going in detail with that? Like, first off, if she walked like a penguin, we all seen a penguin's walk. They have a waddle, so she should like. So a good way to describe that was like maybe she tilts when she walks. Maybe her legs, not her legs, but her feet points outward. But that's details don't nobody focus on. Like that's a little too direct.
And these little details, sometimes it's like, don't like make it obvious. Like you're trying to emphasize on that. It should be like super casual. Like if you want to emphasize the waddle, it would be really, really brief. Like after talking to so-and-so, she waddled over to her group mates and stuck her head in between theirs to see what they were looking at. And so basically it moves the scene along, it moved the plot along, but like you get a little bit of this is what she is like. This is her personality. And we're gonna talk about this in a second, but like actions speak louder. We talked about this last week. Actions speak louder than the words. But like that's how you reveal your character's personalities. Because when you in real life, you don't just say, you look like a penguin, because that might come off as something else entirely. But I mean, the best way to think about it is in real life, what would a person do? What do you think a person would do in this certain situation with this kind of personality? What would they do? Yeah, so create real people, make them feel real too.
And sometimes you don't really have to come up with the character's personality off the top of your head. You could really look to like people like your friends. Not all people in the friend group act alike. My best friend, he acts one way and I act the other, despite us growing up together. It's like even childhood friends are different. And you can also utilize celebrities, which sometimes can prove to be a little difficult because sometimes celebrities will have like this camera personality and then a real life personality. Like you got something on your mind over there, JT? What's going on?
Oh, no, I agree with what you were saying. That's why.
Oh, okay.
If you like can't visualize it in any other way, think about DMs or like texting. We talked about this in episode in podcast number 3, dialogue. Everybody has their own unique voice. When you're texting someone, the way you text will differ from person to person, no matter like terms of region or like whether you grew up in the same environment. I have a habit of grammatically punctuating and capitalizing everything in my sentence so it's grammatically correct. Almost nobody does this. Everybody likes using everything lowercase, use abbreviations, and sometimes I do that too. But like, I like having things in a grammatically correct format, and that also just talks about personality. That's just the way I am. I enjoy having things neat, nice, the way they're supposed to be. Sometimes I'll bend the rule a bit, but like, look at that. That's my personality. I just kind of showed you my person. Like, if you can create a character that is similar to that. And so in that case, yeah, real life inspiration. Celebrities are harder because you don't know them personally on an intimate level. So using friends and even yourself, I find that basing main characters off of yourself, as non-humble as it sounds, basing them off of yourselves I feel like it's very genuine, because then you have to imagine, if I was in this character's shoes, what would I do? genuinely, if I was stuck in a 10-story building and the 5th floor is burning up, what am I going to do? And when you think like that, then you really understand that character specifically the best. Because then, if I was in his case, I would go do A, B, and C. And so your character would go do that too. Their thought process is your thought process. And that's, in my opinion, the easiest way to do a main character. But basing him off of real people helps bring that genuine feeling from each one of them as well. And we'll talk about this in a second as well.
And the thing is, oh, that sounds terrible. And the thing about making these characters' personality is that one thing I see people do is that they make their character too good. Like, that's also
too
terrible.
Perfect. Too perfect.
Yes, there you go. My Spanish teacher's going to kill me.
So, for example, the main character is the son of a CEO, or like some really, really, really rich kid, or they're just too perfect. They have everything.
Mm-hmm. We need flaws. Maybe they have a really bad scar from their childhood, or maybe they have a birthmark that's that's out there that you could easily notice.
Emotional trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also something you we will talk about this in future episodes, but using certain plot devices, you have to be careful not to overuse them. I know, for example, emotional drama, there is a lot of abusive fathers, and I feel like it just doesn't feel real to me. And that's not because I have an abusive father and I know what it's like. That's not true. It's you have to be able to analyze and think, how would someone genuinely react to this? When we talk about creative process, use all your knowledge that you know to make a certain event as realistic as possible. Because the thing that makes it realistic is going to make it relatable to the people who have actually experienced something like this before. And then they'll be like, this person completely gets me. And then you'll have a deeper emotional tie with the characters or with the story in general. Just like when I said earlier with Superman. Even Superman has flaws. Superman used to be to kryptonite. Kidnapped Lois Lane. And he'll do anything to save her. Every superhero has a weakness. No one is an exception. So do steer away from having your characters be like, oh, I am super duper rich, or I'm super good with the ladies. Because most of the time, most of us who are writing here on Wattpad are not. I'm not trying to diss on all of us, because I can definitely say for me, I am not very well with the ladies. But, it's just, does it fit your character? If your character is very is a ladies' man, he's a respectable person, then by all means, yes. But you have to be able to make this character feel like he is real. I know I keep repeating it over and over again, but it's really hard to get across. I mean, aside from flaws, motivations. If you think, for anybody who's seen Pirates of the Caribbean, The Dead Man's Chest, you have all these different characters all looking for the chest of Davy Jones. This is going to come off as spoilers, but I think it should be vague enough that you don't lose the hook. But basically, the entire story of this movie is a race against time to find the chest of Davy Jones, which contains his heart. And all these characters have their own motivations to finding this chest, and that is the central goal to this movie. You got Captain Jack Sparrow, who wants to get the chest so that way he can control Davy Jones, and so that way Davy Jones doesn't kill him. You got the Admiral, I don't remember his name, but basically he's kind of like the British villain in this story, and he wants the chest so that way he can control the 7 seas and stop piracy once and for all. You got Commodore Norrington, who wants to restore his honor, and by getting the chest and giving it to the Admiral, he can get his honor back and his position back. You got Will Turner, who wants to save his father from Davy Jones' ship, and he's determined to kill Davy Jones through the chest. and release his father from the curse. And lastly, Davy Jones, of course, he doesn't want anybody getting to his chest, so he's trying to get it too. And from each one of these, you can see different bits of their personality. Captain Jack Sparrow, he just wants to survive. Davy Jones, just the same, but for somewhat slightly different reasons. Norrington, he wants his position back. He wants his honor back. He wants the not, I don't know how to describe it. Like, he wants the feeling that he once had. He fell, and now he wants to come back up. And then the Admiral, he wants to end piracy. And if you think about it from his perspective, even though he is the villain of the story, it's a very just cause, although somewhat twisted. And then you got Will Turner, filial piety. He wants to help his father, and it speaks volumes for each one of the characters, because you understand them a little better when you understand why they're all trying to get after this one box. They all want the box, but they all want it for different reasons. And so these little motivations that these characters have, it lets you can infer things about the characters, and it makes them feel a lot more motivated.
I like that. That was a good description.
Thank you.
For someone who hasn't really seen the movie like that, that's a really good description.
I'm going to reference this movie again in our plot podcast whenever we get to it. But like, it's actually very similar to Avengers Infinity War. If you think about it, if you just replace the characters, you know, you got Thanos and the Avengers, and they're all trying to get to the Infinity Stones before each other, and they're all doing it for different reasons. But although the Avengers are doing it under a more united cause, and so you got Thanos versus the Avengers, and you're on that time crunch again, and they're all trying to collect all 6 Infinity Stones before the other one, you know.
Yes.
And that also speaks about the character as well, in a way.
I'm enjoying this so far. But we'll see. It kind of reminds me of the dialogue one. I actually am enjoying this. But another thing about your characters and the motivation and flaws and whatnot, some things you don't want, well, there's no some things, you don't want to tell the reader everything they want or everything they need to know about the character. You want to sort of like make that subtle, reveal it through their actions instead of telling the reader that, he likes to keep his fork on the right side because maybe his father was right-handed, so he wants to use his right hand or something like that.
Yeah. It's like, I see this sometimes in writing, and I find it really annoying. Did you hear that? Yeah.
Wow.
Help me. Yeah, so things you should know everything about your characters, because as the writer, knowing everything about your characters then gives you the ability to know how to approach things in a certain way. But the readers don't need to know everything, because the readers should be they need to learn about the characters, and then they have to pick up on things on themselves. So you can drop little clues along the way as to what these characters are like, and you can include scenes that help reveal more about the characters, but you should not tell your readers straight off the bat everything about them. I see extreme descriptions in some stories, and I just look at it and just be like, why do I need to know that? Sometimes, like, why is that even there? And maybe just a rule of thumb: 10%. You don't want to give everything away, but maybe about 10% is a decent amount of like how much of the character you should reveal. Sometimes me personally as well, I have scenes where in dialogue, one of the characters kind of just reveal themselves as to who they truly are to one of the other characters, you know. And so sometimes it depends. Does the dialogue prompt for that? Does it flow into that point where it is justified? This is going to be a bit of a stretch, but like, for people who don't know me, JT, I do magic as a hobby, and I find that a lot of the philosophies and theories and principles are applicable in a lot of real life scenarios. I'm pretty sure Teller said this in a interview once. I don't remember where, but in magic, action is a motion with purpose. And this you can apply to almost anything. Action is motion with purpose. If I do a certain motion, what is it trying to accomplish? If the audience does not understand the unspoken purpose behind it, then it's going to be suspicious and it draws unwanted attention to it. So, for example, if I have I'm just making something up here. If I'm trying to hide a coin behind my ear for whatever purpose, I'm not going to I'm not going to just like put my hand up to my ear and then bring it back down. Then it's just like, why is he bringing his hand up to his ear, right? But if I like change my hand position and like scratch the side of my head while dropping the coin behind my ear, then the audience goes, oh, he's scratching his ear, he's itchy. And that makes sense, right? So action is motion with purpose. And you have to do the same with your characters as well. When your character does something, why does your character do it? Is it because I mean, you can't just say it's because of their personality, right? Their personality dictates, like for me, I am an organized person, but it organizes in a way that only makes sense to me. To other people, it looks like a freaking mess, but everything looks organized. Everything is in the right place for me. And that's just how it is. If someone tells me to clean up their room, why do I need to clean up my room? It looks fine. Everything's in the place where it's supposed to be. So if you just hear that as dialogue, then you understand, one, they're either super lazy, or two, they have their own organizational system that they use, and they think in a different way than other people. And so again, you should keep this in the back of your head. Action is motion with purpose. When something happens, there has to be a reason for it. And this is just general writing and overall. If it doesn't make sense, or if it doesn't belong, then the readers are going to notice it and be like, that's a little off. Something's a little off here. This is why sometimes you need to edit, you need proofreading, and you need it from a set of from a third-party point of view. So, feel free to hit us up, and we can help you do that.
Advertisement, love it.
Selfless plug.
But should we throw in the show and don't tell, or did we kind of just went over that?
I mean, I think I just kind of went over that. No, not really. Show and don't tell. Especially if you've grown up in America, you hear this a lot. Show and don't tell. There's this wonderful quote I found for this one, actually. God, the thunder's scaring me. God. What was it? It was, there's a quote by Fred East. And for those who don't know, Fred East is, how do I describe it? He's kind of an old author. He does kind of like Western stuff, I think. It's relatively old. It's like Wild West kind of environment. But anyway, Fred East once says, if you tell the reader, oh, voice crack, good Lord. let me drink some for a sec. Fun fact, in 5th grade, my nickname was voice crack. Anyway. All right, quote from Fred East. If you tell the reader that Bull Besley is a brutal-faced, loose-lipped bully with snake's blood in his veins, the reader's reaction may be, oh yeah. But if you show the reader Bull Beasley raking the bloody flanks off his weary, sweat-encrusted pony and flogging the tottering red-eyed animal with a quirt, or having him booting in the protruding ribs of a starving mongrel, and oh boy, the reader believes. If you just compare those two, the first one is clearly telling. You're just telling them that this character is, one, brutal face, two, loose-lipped bully, three, snake blood in his veins, although that is a bit of a metaphor. And I mean, like, snake blood is venom, right? So I believe that's what the metaphor is. So it's just like, he's a very bad person, is what they're telling you. But if you show him beating a pony, or not really beating a pony, was it raking the bloodied flanks? I don't even know what that means. Like, his pony, his sweaty, tired pony has bloody flanks. for some reason, and he's breaking it. I think he's either cleaning it or he's clawing it. But either way, that's really not good. Or he's flogging the creature with a quirt, whatever that is, or booting him in the ribs of the starving mongrel. And just hearing that, you get a lot more out, right? It's less direct, but it's more engaging. I mean, doesn't it just sound cooler that Bull is booting the protruding ribs of a starving mongrel rather than saying, Bull is a brutal-faced, loose-lipped bully with snake blood in his veins. You good, bro?
Yeah. I can't really answer at the moment. Well, actually, I'm going ahead and answer it before she gets...
You can mute and go answer it. No problem.
Yeah.
I'll keep talking. But yeah, show, don't tell. The best way, I mean, like, an easy way to think of it is, like, back with dialogue, direct and indirect tags. So-and-so said, blah, 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 blah. So that would be an indirect quote. Like, somebody, Jay said he's going to go answer the door. For example, that would be an indirect quote, right? And that would be more of telling. Now, if it was, if you're going to show me what's happening, I'm going to go answer the door, said Jay. And so that way you have an action. You're showing the reader the character doing something rather than just telling them that. And it's a lot more engaging that way when you say, I really don't know how to go about this because I can't think of an example off the top of my head. It's, how do I say this? Show, don't tell. Instead of saying, when I was 5, I went to the swimming pool, have it come off as like, school had just let out, the mosquitoes were infested the air, and a 5-year-old me walked through the streets. See, and there's so much more detail, and there's more. I haven't gotten to the point that I got to the pool, but you can kind of stretch that out and elongate it. So 5-year-old me is walking on the streets. I turned the corner and I saw the sign that said, I don't know, Parkwood Pool. You know, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but like, if you show the readers what the characters are doing rather than telling them so-and-so is doing this, it sounds more fun. If I, like, Jay went to go get a bowl of cereal. Okay, what about it? Jay walked over to the kitchen and opened the countertop. A couple plates almost fell out the counter, and he reflexively shot his hands out and grabbed them before they could hit the countertop. That sounds a lot more engaging than rather than he went to the kitchen to get a plate, you know?
I feel attacked.
Sorry, I just see Jay in his kitchen right now, so...
Don't expose me. I'm hungry.
Sorry, bro. But, like, show and don't tell. That is just, like, a very basic thing that you should just keep in mind as you are, you know, writing.
I'm sorry. She came in. I lost my entire train of thought.
No problem. No problem at all. It is raining like a mother out here.
Hopefully it stays up there. It doesn't come down. Well, no, I need a little bit of rain.
No, it's coming down like real freaking hard. This is like intense rain. Sorry, guys. Very distracted. It was just sunny like 5 minutes ago. Probably not 5 minutes ago, but you get what I mean. It's pretty bad. Right.
See, our next topic is changes throughout the story.
Yes. We talked about, remember when we talked about Hero's Journey back, I think it was in that first episode.
Pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with the Heroes episode, it essentially splits everything into 2 worlds. Oh shoot, I'm low on battery. Please excuse some potentially low audio quality for me in a couple seconds. All right, so. Okay, is it working?
Yes,
You'll probably hear more rain, but you know, oh well. All right, so changes throughout the story. If you think back to the hero's journey, there are essentially 2 worlds that the character travels in between. There's the normal world, and then there's the unknown world, which the hero has to venture into. And so for the most part, once the hero goes into this unknown world, then when he comes out, he's going to take something away from his experience in this unknown world. And so when he comes back, he's going to be a completely different person. So in one way or another, in your story, you need to show that your character is changing in the loosest terms. The character is going to be is kind of being enlightened as the story goes along.
Well, I got a really good example.
Yeah.
All right. You mentioned hero's journey. It actually brought me up to The Hobbit. So in The Hobbit, the main character, Bilbo Baggins, he kind of just want to live a regular life. Kind of just want to stay in his little, what is it, a hut or something like that. But that's until Gandalf comes, and then by the end of the story, Bilbo is like, oh, I really actually do like adventures. But there's like some development there, which you're going to get into in another episode. But you could tell that from the beginning of the story and the end of the story, something about the main protagonist or main character has changed. And that's one thing, that's why we're talking about earlier. That's what we was talking about earlier when we were saying that some people make their characters too good. If they're too good at everything, they do everything perfectly fine, then what's the point of reading the story? So that's why I kind of just thought about Bilbo. Actually, I love him. He's a really cool guy.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, that's another thing with character has to change.
As the plot progresses, you eventually change as well with the character, because your writing style will kind of change as you move along. And not just the writer changes, the world changes because of what the character is doing as they're going through this world. But in the end, your characters change as well. And maybe, just maybe, after your reader is done reading, they change too. Food for thought. Maybe that readers, they come out and they see things in a slightly different way. True. So yeah, change happens all the time. When you learn something new, you change. You've gained something new. I mean, what else? Change
Talk about butterflies.
Change is always constant. Yeah, no kidding. Like when you're growing, you're learning something new. You're gaining new knowledge and all that. Mm-hmm. In terms of like creating like a character from scratch, we talked about earlier about that you should know everything about your characters, and a lot of way of doing that is pretend that you are interacting with your character. Pretend like you're conversing with them. Imagine they're in front of you. If you were to ask them something, how would they respond? A lot of this is just creative visualization inside your head, but for the most part, being able to visualize it will help them come to life. Even if it's in just your head, it'll help you get some more knowledge into what this character is like. So you can establish their personalities by understanding their childhood, their relationships with certain characters, how they live, what do they like to do for fun, how do they view the world, just all these different things. You can just look at yourself too, just to analyze this. So like childhood, I don't know. I had a relatively boring childhood.
I had a pretty exciting one, so I'll go a little bit on mine. So in my childhood, I was more like an outside kid and played sports a lot, and football, soccer, basketball. But now it's not the end of my story, but right now in the middle of my story, I hate the outdoors because I hate mosquitoes. So that's a bit of a change there.
That is a straight up mood.
I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to the outside. Maybe I'll stay inside. Depends.
For me, this is a big part of my personal background. Ever since I was 2 years old, as long as I could remember, I remember telling my mom at the age of 2 that I wanted to play the cello. I don't know why, but I really wanted to play the cello at that age. But my mom said, if you have to wait until you're 5 for some reason, and if you still want to play then I will support you and you can play cello. And so age 5 comes, I still want to play cello. I've been taking cello classes ever since. It has been 13, almost 14 years now. And because of it, I have sat first chair in a couple orchestras. I have won multiple competitions in chamber music. I have played at Carnegie Hall in New York City.
Ooh.
Yeah, 2017, February. I remember. It was great. And I have developed perfect pitch because of it. I've talked to friends recently. I'm not sure if it's perfect pitch, but it's more like really fine-tuned relative pitch. I'm not sure. But I can tell, like, you play me a note, I can tell you what note it is. You tell me a note, I can play it for you. But like, that's as far as I can go with it. But that also just says a lot about me. 13 years, 14 years almost now of straight up cello. I'm going to tell you, it takes a lot of perseverance just to stick with it that long. It's, yeah. So that just tells you about me. We know a little bit more about Jay as well. Yeah.
I like spokes.
and
go ahead.
You go.
All right. Well, I went first last time.
No, you go first. It's fine. I've been talking.
All right, bet. All right. So another form of change, well, not another form of change, but another example. I'm actually not going to tell the writer story. Just going to keep it as vague as possible. But I read this story, and it was about how I'm going to say a street thug is what he was. He used to be a part of this big, like, a big crime gang, basically, while he was in high school. And so basically one day he decides, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to get a job. I want to live my best life. And then by the end of it, like, of course, there's like a lot of stuff that happens in the middle, but, you know, don't want to expose too much. But at the end of the story, he becomes the manager of like actually he becomes more than a manager, but he becomes a manager of this worldwide K-pop group. And also he becomes a part of a K-pop group as well.
Wow.
And what? I didn't want to tell the story because I didn't. I want you. Yeah, you guys can find it on your own.
Maybe we'll tell you one day if he ever has a change of heart.
Potentially.
Yeah. And a good rule of thumb is, as you're creating these characters, is create a character that you really, really want to spend time with. Like for me, when I wrote my con artist one, I really, really wanted to be like in the room where everything happens, you know? Just like, I want to be in the room when they're forming their little plan. I want to be in their room where, like, when they're about to gear up, they're playing around with psychological tricks. I want to be with my main character when he's teaching I don't want to say anything, but like the protege in a way. He's teaching her all these little psychological tricks. I want to be with them when this is all happening, you know? And so if you create a character that you really want to spend time with, then to some other people, it will become a character that they want to spend time with too. So like, how do I say this? Just think of your favorite TV show, movie, or like a book, and just think of a character that you just really want to spend time with, and think about what is it about them that you really want to spend time with, you know? So like Iron Man, he's my favorite Marvel superhero, and I want to spend time with him because he's a freaking sassy, smart head, you know, and he's just always cracking all of these, you know, stupid, sarcastic remarks, but it just seems like so much fun to be around, you know? And so that's the character I want to spend time with. Can I create a character that's similar to that? Can I create some wisecrack, sarcastic guy who wants to, who gnaws at me constantly? I don't know. But like, that's more or less should be something that you're striving for when you create a character.
But since you mentioned Iron Man, I guess I could mention my love for Captain America. I've always
liked Captain America.
How dare you?
Just a personal preference. I I just don't feel that connection with Captain America.
I don't know. I like him. I like his story because he went from zero to Frozen to hero.
I mean, like, it is a very interesting plot. I just don't like the character that much.
But he thick. I'm sorry.
But it's America's. It belongs to America. Please excuse us. Dirty jokes.
And really bad laughing because I know I sound stupid.
Yeah, but that's another thing you could do. Talk about the way your character laughs. If they sound stupid when they laugh, it might be realistic, you know?
Sometimes they snort.
I mean, yeah. I mean, no, snort is a very common thing in laughter, actually. Including, include snort. Snorting is part. I think a lot of people stray away from that because it's kind of considered weird or disgusting or whatever. But, like, it's very realistic. I hear snorting and people laughing all the time. And it mostly comes when people are, like, dying of laughter. Because they're trying to get a breath, but it's like your body's counteracting yourself. And then a snort comes out. And then you laugh even harder. And it's just, you know, endless loop. You want to keep laughing. And that also goes to show character as well. So,
as it should.
Yeah. So just like a rule maybe you should set when you're making these characters is make them real. That is probably the biggest takeaway from this podcast. If anything, make these characters real. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So that also means your main character will not succeed at everything that he does. So it won't be 100% all the time, and so you have to let them fail every now and then. Because if they don't fail, if they're doing if there's a bunch of events that are going to happen, have them fail at least one. Because then that just goes to show it isn't because they are some prodigy or something. They are susceptible to failure too, just like you and me, and that adds an element of real reality to it, you know? And that's just what makes it appealing. You see them fail, and then you feel sorry for them. You see them succeed, and you see them succeed, and you feel happy for them. But if your main character constantly wins and succeeds over and over and over again, then it just doesn't come as a surprise anymore. Then each time the event comes, you know, oh, he's going to make it through. He'll be fine. And then when he finally does it, you're just like, I called it. He's going to be fine. And you move on. And you don't share that joy that they've done it, you know? So, like, for me, in my story, the heist kind of succeeded, but it also kind of failed in a way, too. All with purpose. You should go read it if you haven't. You'll understand. I will reference my book a lot.
Advertisement. With the character filling thing, though, I feel like most of my Twice fans, my onces can relate to this the most. But if you remember Momo from 16, we all thought she was going to make it. But guess what? She failed, even though she came back. But before all the episodes came out, you wasn't sure if she was going to come back or not.
I know. Yeah.
And I thought, like, that's a really good. Are you okay?
I did not enjoy watching 16. It was very stressful to watch them. It pained me to watch them go through it. But yeah, that is a very good example. I didn't think of that. That is a really good example.
Really, a lot of reality TV, not reality TV. Yeah, like the survival shows really could bring that out. Like, of course, you don't want to go over everything that's in the show, but if you're just not starting watching a show, like for me, I started watching Island, which is a Big Hit and I think it's an Mnet survival show. In the first episode, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know who was going to get eliminated. I didn't know there would be an elimination. So it's like that's how good. I was
good. Dang, bro, they got you good.
Yeah, and then it was my favorite training on top of that. But like in the beginning, you don't know. You want to keep your reader guessing. Like you don't want to just hand them everything they want on a plate to eat. No, you want to bring in different entrees, make them starve.
but you don't want to make it too extreme. Don't make the twist so it's not sudden. You shouldn't make it so obscure. Like when the twist comes, it should be like everything leads up to that moment in a way, and it should be revealed in a way that throughout the entire story leading up to the twist, everything has been put into place to set up that twist. There's little clues in my story. I have multiple twists in my story. So like I everything in the early chapters leading up to the big reveal, I am dropping little breadcrumbs, Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs along the way. So that way, if somebody notices them, maybe they'll pick up on them, and then when it comes to the end, they'll be like, I knew it. And there's that excitement when you figure something out. You're like, I knew it. I knew he was going to do something with that, you know? But even if you don't notice it, you'll be like, wait, hold on a second. If you go back and reread it, I have laid the clues down before you. You just haven't been aware of them, you know? So just like you have to breadcrumb it. You have to leave a trail, but it shouldn't be an obvious trail. It should be really subtle. Like when you tell them, they don't care. At that moment, they will not care. But like later on, when they hit it, then they'll be like, hold on a second. Didn't he say something about this? Didn't so-and-so do something earlier? And they'll go back and check. And then they'll draw the connection between the two. And they'll be like, he's been building up to this moment all along. How did I not notice? You know? So being able to, lead up to that moment. Yeah, we're supposed to be talking about character design. I don't know what we're talking about here.
Well, now it's time for the examples. And I know you've been waiting for this since the beginning.
So for the most part, we've been just dropping little like clues, tidbits, advice on how to create your characters. And then, so now we're going to give you examples from some other sources. And then we're going to talk about how we design our characters personally. So our first example is the recently released Hamilton by Lin-Manuel Miranda, the play. It is spectacular. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. It is wonderful. In terms of character design, you can't really design a character because it's history, right? So the characters are already made. But the problem is when you're telling a story with such a limited cast, you have an actor playing multiple characters at once, not at once, but like throughout the play. So how do you know let's use David Diggs, for example. He's my favorite. He plays Lafayette and Thomas Jefferson. But Lafayette is only present in the beginning, and Thomas Jefferson appears in Act 2. So what makes these two characters so unique? What makes them different from one another? And I think this is one of the genius moments, bits of Lin-Manuel's brain, is he kind of characterizes each character with a musical style. So when you have, I mean, of course, Lafayette, he has a French accent when he's acting, but when Thomas Jefferson first enters with the song "What Did I Miss," it's very jazz styled, and so the feeling is completely different than Lafayette's really aggressive raps, his accent, and it's a complete different shift. You have the Schuyler sisters, who have a bit of a contemporary R&B, Destiny Child kind of sound to it, right? And these are more vocal. Although like Angelica and I guess Peggy has a bit of a rapping thing, but they're all vocal, very I don't know how to do it because rap is also kind of musical, but it's very lyrical, and it's very melodical rather than rhythm based. And highlight one of my favorite characters to King George III. Jonathan Groff did an amazing job with him. But King George III, each time he comes out, as soon as you hear the music, you know it's him. That's what makes that character identifiable. You immediately hear that and you know it's him. I know what he's like. If you don't know from history, King George III kind of went nuts during this time, not during this time period, but like he kind of went crazy at some point in his life, to the point, what was it? In one of his insanity fits, he would end each sentence with the word peacock. That's how bad it got. And so Lin-Manuel Miranda would kind of showcase his insanity in the little lyrical, nonsensical syllables. And that's just showing his insanity, you know? And so he categorizes that specific sound for King George III, and it's a very 1960s British pop kind of sound with like classical music elements, and it's like contemporary music but in the opposite direction. And so it's just, each of these characters by design are very, very unique from one another. And so because of that, it's just, you know, they all are very unique in their own way. They all are individual peoples. Although in history that is what it is, but in the play, it really makes them different from one another. You know?
True. That's why I like musicals. Taking music appreciation made me like musicals and operas and arias. Yeah, music is nice. But I also implemented character design in my first story. But technically it wasn't my first, but the first story on Wattpad, Dimple. See, the main character, first of all, is a reader insert. And the main character is basically you could say he's a part-timer. And he works part-time at a pet shelter. So he's already, he's that. And throughout the story, he encounters these different things. It kind of tests his limits. Like, okay, first chapter, I could do a little briefing on this. First chapter, he's in a shelter. His supervisor steps away, and so he meets Chae-young, who is the daughter of a flower girl. Right off the bat, like, you know, they don't know each other and stuff, but I kind of sort of hint at their relationship. And if anybody like read the story as I was producing it, you would know like the entire time I'm writing these chapters, I'm putting you into a relationship, taking you back out, putting you back in, until like, you know, the final, what's it called? Epilogue. Okay. And with the epilogue, you could tell that from the first chapter, he was just a part-time vet, like a pet shelter, then had many friends. He was a bit dense with things. And then with the epilogue, boom, kids. Right off the rip. Right off the rip. So I didn't do it that well, considering that I didn't have that much experience with writing as I made the story. But I mean, you have to start somewhere. So thankfully I did write the story and kept it. Because now I have somewhere to go or somewhere to start off with. So yeah.
Talk about how you design your characters specifically. Like, how do you make them unique? How do you create their personalities, background? Like, how did you create them?
All right, bet. All right. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to go too much in detail or not. But so the reader, as I mentioned before, he works at a pet shelter under a supervisor. His supervisor is like a mother figure for him, since in the story his mother, and well, it's prior to the story, but it's not funny, but describing it now, it kind of is.
Jay.
I'm sorry. So basically, the main character works at a pet shelter under his supervisor, whose name I actually forgot. And a supervisor is like a mother figure for him, because his mother is, prior to the story, dead. And I kind of want. I wanted to start off. I want to start his character off as someone who's like dense, someone who thinks like, who tries to see past the trauma, basically. But because of this trauma, he actually reveals like more of a caring kind of personality. I'm doing like really poor with describing this. But there's like a couple of other characters. I feature BTS in there. I don't really detail their personalities that well or that in depth because they're not as important to the story. Chae-young, the main character, and then the person who kind of completes the main love triangle, Mina. And I made Mina more like as her real life counterpart. She's an introvert, but when she's around the right people, she reveals a little bit more of her personality. Now, I do butcher it because, like I said, I don't know Mina that well, but I wanted it to be interesting. So I made her a bit jealous, a little bit straightforward when she's along with Chae-young in one scene. And I felt with that happening, that would kind of like waver their friendship a little bit. And so Chae-young would probably go to somebody else, like her mom. Not to mention that her mom is also like a second mom for the main character because they grew up in the same neighborhood. It just, the main character didn't know Chae-young. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed my very poor description of my own story. It's been a few
No
years.
problem. If you haven't thought about it that much before, then it might be hard to think of it right now.
It is. It's very hard.
So for my story, how I like to create my character is I don't really assign a face to anything yet. I kind of create placeholders in which I want my characters to be something like, I want this character to be something like this, X, Y, and Z, and I want this character to be A, B, C, that kind of thing. But then once everything is like organized and I have a good idea who's going to be doing what, I kind of imagine in my head, if I let it play out, if it's like a movie, who would I cast to best reflect this character? So in my story with the Art of the Con, it's also a reader insert. So I had like several positions for the team, right? So you have the mastermind, the con artist, and that would be the main character, and that would be kind of a reflection of me because I really love con stuffs, and I've been researching that for a long time before. Then you have the hacker, and so that one I kind of went around my normal rule because I remember in the Twice BDZ video, Jongyeon was kind of the hacker in the video, so I kind of created that specific hacker characteristic around her. But I had to kind of think about what would her personality be like, and I also have to imagine like what is she going to be, how would she interact with the main character. And so you have to visualize what is their interaction like. Is it strictly friends, or is it like, is there a relationship going anywhere? But I try to make it clear that they're strictly platonic. For Jenny, so her role was a hitman, well, hit woman. But basically, I wanted to create. I had Jenny in mind for this because from their Kill This Love album, I saw in her, she looked a lot like Lara Croft in my opinion, and I kind of based that part around her as well. And also, low key, don't hate me or anything, but Jenny did used to be my bias, but I'm not sure what happened. At some point, she started to scare me. You know,
How?
I don't know. It's just she has this aura. Like, I think it's especially in her pictures as well. It's very intimidating, and I mean this in the good in the best way possible. Jenny is it's like, it's also just might be me as like personality wise. I'm a very timid person, so her stare I find very, I don't know, intrusive, intimidating. I'm not sure, but it's just like it's very it's not condescending, but it's like it's like the eyes of a predator, you know. Like they're moving in to hunt, moving in to kill, right? And so I thought that would be perfect for the role of a hitman, and I kind of made her character. I didn't really make a character. I made a character for her to fit in, although she may, personality wise, she may not be like that. But it's very. She's she teases a lot. She's not very serious about a lot of things, and somewhat uneducated too. She's not in real life, again, but like her main thing is seduce, get close to the target, and eliminate, you know. And so I kind of revolved a lot around that kind of intimidation idea. For the actress, this it's kind of a con artist role, but like the actress, her role is to pretend that she's something that she is not. So of course I wanted to include like a bit of a odd twist. Instead of him immediately finding the actress, I kind of made it a more roundabout thing, and I created this kind of sister figure to the main character where she is basically obviously not blood related, but she just kind of like take cares of him after he is on the streets. I just felt like Sana was she's very, very flirty and very touchy, which I feel like is a different form of intimacy than with like siblings, very similar in a way. So I felt like Sana was a very good fit to be like the sister figure, and she wanted to do everything to protect the main character, you know. And so Sana then became the imprisoned actress, who you will get to see again at the end of the book. But she brings up a protege who is kind of she's like a clean slate in the world of the crime underworld, and so she's very new to all this. She understands methods and principles, but she isn't really sure how to apply them. And so I kind of hint at like she is learning as she's going along the way. And I felt like Dahyun is a very innocent kind of person who isn't really well versed in this kind of thing. So exposing her to this kind of world opens her eyes a bit, and she's just kind of learning as she's going along, and she's enjoying it. And I remember from from 16 that JYP said that she's a very charismatic person, and I felt like this was perfect because she is a natural prodigy, and so she has this natural raw skill and talent to be able to pull this off. And so, which explains why she's able to expertly do all these things, even though she's very new to all this. It just comes naturally. And then there's the thief and the safecracker, which is Rose and V. I had a friend who talked about shipping, and I don't condone shipping because it feels very weird to me. But I felt like we needed like I felt like we needed like a relationship inside the thing, because it helps accentuate a certain idea that I wanted to get across, that emotions can cause you to do ridiculous things, which does occasionally happen, and that's what like results in Sana being imprisoned in the first place. But like it really sets up for the ending, when everything starts to wrap up and everyone is impacted by a certain event in the end. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So shipping, I don't really condone it, but I felt like there had to be some other relationship in this thing, and I didn't want the characters just to be from Twice and Blackpink. So I just got another guy character from somewhere, and honestly, BTS is one of the only guy groups at the time that I listened to because of my sisters. So I just picked V because he was like, he was kind of like the quiet guy. He doesn't talk a lot, and he just kind of like looks and observes and all that. And that's kind of the character that I revolve around, V. And there was a person who was in my story that who was confused for a second, but I'm not sure. I should probably clarify it here. But Taehyung and V, although in real life they are the same people and V is the stage name, in the story they are two different people. And that is what the idea of doppelganger revolves around, is that they are identical people, right? Doppelganger is the idea that like there's an identical person, not like physically. There's a person who looks exactly like you somewhere in the world, somewhere, just by pure genetic probability, right? And so it was the idea that V was going to pretend to be Taehyung, and so that way he can smoothly make a getaway. And so I took that into account into creating Taehyung later in the story. But in terms of Rose, I just try to her character was just based off of her in real life from what I can see from videos and her interactions. And so a lot of my stories is either I'm pretending to cast, or I am having them in real life being themselves. And those are one of the two methods that I try to gear towards. Oh wait, there's one more. Yoongi. Kind of a spoiler, but Yoongi is the villain
of the story. And the reason being, because BTS, I wanted more guy characters in here because I pretty much only listened to girl groups. But BTS was pretty much the only group that I really listened to because, again, siblings. But I felt like out of all of the characters, Yoongi it's similar to Jennie. Like he's a little intimidating. He has this like glare, and it just stares at you, and it stares really deep into your soul or something like that. And it's just like he's analyzing everything that you are doing. And I kind of turned that into a character for this story, and I think it really fits really well with Yoongi.
Especially with his new mixtape. Well, not really much of a mixtape. It's actually like I don't know what they call it, but his new song, Detrita.
Oh, that one. That
yeah.
See, it's just that when he looks at the camera, you'll see what I mean. It's just like it just pierces through the camera, through the screen, and right into you. And it's just kind of unsettling. And I kind of wanted to get that. I mean this in the best way possible, okay? People don't hate me on this. It's just I'm taking things that I feel when I see these, and I'm trying to incorporate them into the character themselves. I have nothing against them. Yoongi is my sister's bias, okay? So
She chose wise.
I mean, they all have very interesting characteristics. And so like I try to let that play into how I want my characters to form and how I want this is the roles that they're going to play, and then I can adapt their personalities to the person, or I can let the person's personality envelop the characters, the characteristics that I've laid out for them, and then I see how that pans out. So yeah, that's how I use it in my story.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of today's podcast. Well, this week's podcast. Make sure you check us out at our website, kficcafe.witsite.com/K-Fic Cafe. You can contact us through our email, which is thekficcafe@gmail.com. You can see us on Instagram, K-Fic Cafe, Wattpad, which is my username. J is kpopper_writer17.
And for me, JT, it is K of Pop once.
And you can also find us on YouTube under K-Fic Cafe. There's a lot of K-Fic Cafe to say.
And you can also find us under K-Fic Cafe in terms of podcasts on our website, and Anchor, which is our main distributor. And so they send it to other podcast platforms such as Anchor, of course, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Breaker, RadioPublic, Spotify, Apple, and a lot more. And we manually upload this onto our YouTube every week at the K-Fic, just K-Fic Cafe, and there's a K-Fic Cafe. Yeah,
that was
I think that's all of our
interesting.
information, man.
And honestly, if you made it this far into the podcast, we know that it's about 6 to 7 days per podcast when we do these recordings. So that's a lot of time for things to happen. And with the coronavirus and everything that's going on, I want everybody, no matter what you're on, go to YouTube, go to our YouTube account, K-Fic Cafe. And
or Instagram, or our Wattpad conversations, or our DMs on Wattpad. Anything.
That is true. But I want you to send us one good thing that has happened for you this week. Good vibe check. We need good vibes now because, with everything that's happening, we could really use some.
Right,
and well, that's it. Well, everybody, that is all for today. Thank you for coming to the cafe with your coffees and all that good stuff, your questions. We hope all you have a good day. This is Jay and JT signing off. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.